Reading Innocence, Diary of a King. Last time we read chapter 26 was Crossing Over Evil Ground. I'm starting today, chapter 27, To Run or Not to Run. The sun was now started on his downward trip to his hiding place. I thought that no one knew where it was. Maybe it was now rising and bringing its warmness to my homeland. I figured my village, and it made me sad when I saw visions in my head. I saw my whole village defeated by these blue-eyed strangers. I thought about grandmother and was she okay? Was she still looking for me? I hope that no one would hurt her like they did to Abel and my father. These thoughts constantly ran through my head. I tried only to think about the good times, but the anger inside of me kept bringing me back to the worst times. Those men killed Abel and tore my father's insides out and left him hanging in a tree. They had to be evil men to do such a thing. I never thought at any time of someone being this way. It gave me a sick feeling, and I felt myself boiling on the inside of my head. I wonder what Odie had on his mind. Bear with me. Did he carry the same anger that was inside of me? He never talked about his village or what happened to his people. He never even mentioned if he had a family of his own. I thought about what he could do to these people. He never even mentioned it. I bet if he had a hand on these evil men, it would be the last of them. I saw myself jumping for joy as he cut away the head of the evil man. Excuse me. Telemarketers. Where was I? Now was the time to throw the rest of his body into the fire and place his head on one of those poles that was used to hang animals for cleaning out their insides and removing the skin of the animal. I would love to tear away the skin of Massa and Samuel and listen to their screams. That thought made me wonder how they would punish us if we were caught. I came back down to reality. We had to push on faster. We could not slow down. No, not now. When we were so close to being completely out of the hands of Massa and the rest of these evil men. We were so close to the river, I could hear the water going back and forward, back and forward. I remember that sound from the time I was first placed on that big ship. I could see Odie with what looked like a smile on his face, but he seemingly always had that look. That's what made the blue-eyed strangers afraid to be close to him. They didn't know if he was happy or insane, and none of them wanted any piece of him. Whenever they wanted Odie to do something, 3 or 4 men would stand around him, and at least 2 of them always had long guns. Odie stopped and raised his hand to his mouth. He quietly told me to be still and listen. I didn't have hearing like Odie. I did not know what he was listening for. All I was hearing was the sound of the river ahead. He suddenly grabbed me and pulled me down to the ground. He whispered in my ear that there were people ahead of us. They were going, then we would surely run into each other. I now listened as hard as I could. I could make out the sounds of crunching leaves and the snapping of dry tree limbs. It sounded like there was a lot of them. Odie told me to come on, but to stay down as low as I could. I was almost crawling when suddenly Odie yelled at me to watch out. Out of the corner of my left eye, I could see a large figure coming toward me with a large limb in his hand. It was a black man. I guess when he noticed that we were not the blue-eyed strangers that was probably hunting him, he slowed and took a big breath. He then mentioned to the figures that were slumped down in a pile of bushes. When they stood, I saw that there was a woman about Mama's age, a girl maybe 10 or 11, and two boys. One was about Jesse's age, and the other was just a little bit older than him. Odie asked them from which direction had they come. The man said from the way on the lower part of the valley. He said that there were a lot of fields and houses, plenty of slaves, mostly men and boys. He said that they had been running for about 5 days now and was heading to the other side of the river and then north. Odie told him we were heading in the same direction and asked if we could join with them. The man nodded and told us that his name was Cornelius. The woman was called Ruthie, the girl was Essie, and the two boys were James and Henry, who was the older of the two boys. We greeted each other, and while we were talking, we heard in the far distance a sound of dogs howling. This made the children shake, and they all hung around the woman as if she could keep them away from any dangers. She had the look of calmness. Her hair was like Sarah's, and she had skin that was very close to Samuel and Massa. The little girl was lighter than the boys, who were about my color, but the man was even darker than Odie. He said that we should be moving now. The river was only a few miles from us. We guessed because as we walked, the sound it was getting louder and louder. I looked around at everyone and thought to myself that I wanted every one of them to make it across the river and leave all the evil men who were chasing them. I knew we had a very good chance of making it across. I just didn't want the men to see where we went into the water or where we came out. They might have some men on the other side and somehow warn them of our coming. I could not stand that thought. I pushed on and pushed the others to almost a trot. We had to move quickly, and I was going to make sure we did and that we left no one behind for the dogs to eat. After a distance, Odie stopped running and gestured for us all to stop. He then said that we needed to find some limbs with the leaves still on them. He said from this point on, we would drag the limbs behind us. This would erase most of our tracks. He said for all of us that had limbs to brush the ground in sweeping and circular motions, we shouldn't have any problem. We didn't want them knowing how many there were of us. So he took out the spices he had and began to sprinkle them all around our path. He then went a good distance to our right away from the river and down a long path that ran along the lines of trees and disappeared into the dense bushes. We hoped that this would at least give us more time to reach the river. And we hoped that the spices would make the dogs lose our scent and follow the scent of the spices back down the right side of the lines of trees. Odie said that if this worked, then the evil men would think we were trying to backtrack on them and cross the river several miles down the path that led to the dense lines of bushes. We then started sweeping the path where we had met and continued to sweep the ground as we went. Odie told us to make the sweeping look like a normal ground. I felt good about this. We were all glad that Odie was on the outside. The sky was starting to change its colors and it was bringing the darkness. We knew we had to hurry before it got too dark for us to travel, especially with the younger children. The sound of the river was getting so loud that my heart began to run my legs out. I couldn't hold in my excitement, and when I looked over at Odie, he was also smiling, showing all his pearly white teeth. We were going to make it to the river. Once there, we would rest and decide how we were going to cross it. I just wanted to dive right in and swim to freedom. But I knew that we all had to go at it together. We would have to make us something that would stay atop of the water and would hold all of us. I wondered how large the river was. I know it could not be as large as the water we crossed from my homeland, but the sound of it told me that it was not a small running of water. Just the sound alone told us we would have to make something that was sturdy enough to hold us and float us across. I felt in my heart that no matter what, I was going to get into the water, even though I did not know how to swim. If I died trying to cross it, it would be better than letting the evil men take my life and my soul. I was not going to allow that. No, not for one moment. As we neared the sound of the river, we noticed that the sound of the dogs had silenced. I just knew that they could not have reached our previous location that quickly. What had made the dogs stop howling? This made my heart jump, but I was confused at this point. Were they trying to surprise us by quieting the dogs, or were they lost after the dogs started smelling our spices? I thought to myself that it was too quick for them to reach our last stop, but I could not be sure. Out here in these woods, sounds carried and did not accurately indicate how near or far they were. We began to run. Each step, I noticed that the younger boys had panic in their eyes. Even Odie had lost that wide smile. I knew by looking at him that this was very serious and scary at the same time. We came upon a thick clump of brush that covered the entire path, and it had thorny type petals. How are we going to get through this? We would have to either find something to mash them down to the ground or go around. There was no around. Cornelius wished for us to stop. He said that the sacks that we were carrying would need to be split open, and then we could spread them over some of the brush. They would cover some of the thorns, but we still had to be very careful as we crawled over them. I knew that if we made this hurdle, it would definitely give us more time to add distance. And from the hunting party behind us, we started to cross with the women going first, since they were the lightest. Then the younger boys and I. Odie and Cornelius came last. As soon as we were crossed over, I noticed a large opening and had to wipe my eyes. I thought I was looking at the banks of the large river. I could swear that I saw water running slowly past my line of sight. We all made it over with minor scratches, nothing to be worried about. I saw Essie and James start to run toward the river. This made me giddy, and I wanted to run also, but held my ground. I didn't want Odie to know that I couldn't hold my emotions, so I would need to do this in the days to come. I needed him to know that I could remain calm in every situation, but in my heart, I knew that I was a runaway herd of buffalo. Thank you. Tomorrow I'll read some more.